Hello, this is Books of the Stock Market. How's everyone doing? As for me, I'm doing pretty well. It is still snowing like crazy and driving on the highway is almost impossible. The roads seem to be cleared, but it's still frozen solid. There are sections in the highway where the cars are going at 20 miles per hour because of how slippery the highway is. I also saw cars impaled into the snow mounds on the side of the road, which was kind of interesting. So I would recommend avoiding the highways in the Midwest after a lot of snow. With that out of the way, let's get into today's video. In today's video, we'll be talking about the Elliott Wave Theory. In the previous video, I was promising a part 2 of the candlestick video, but thinking about it now, the video wouldn't be very interesting. The planned part 2 of the video will be just going over the various candlestick patterns and saying whether it is bullish or bearish. At that point, Googling candlestick patterns will be a much faster way to look at different candlestick patterns. So in this video, I'll be talking about the next subject, which is called the Elliott Wave Theory. This video for sure will be a 2-part series as this theory can get pretty complicated. Let's start off with the basics of the Elliott Wave Theory. There are 3 basic tenets when talking about the Elliott Wave Theory. I'll be merely defining them in this section of the video, but they will be covered in a more complete fashion in the rest of the series. The first component of the Elliott Wave principle is patterns. This means how the price action of the trend looks like. The price action of certain parts of the trend will be referred to as a wave. The next component is called a ratio. This measures the relationship between different waves to determine retracement points and price objectives. The final component is called time. This confirms the wave patterns and ratios as they need to be done in a certain amount of time. If what I said makes no sense, don't worry because I have an image that explains all of it. These are called waves. As you can see, each leg up or down represents a wave. There are usually 5 waves in a trend. After the 5th wave, we usually see a correction. These usually last for 3 waves and we call them wave A through C. Here comes the confusing part of this theory. I'll be introducing a lot of information in this portion of the video, but will eventually explain all the talking points. First, waves can be divided into rising waves and corrective waves. Rising waves are waves 1, 3, and 5, which are portions of the trend that follow the direction of the trend. On the other hand, waves 2 and 4 are called corrective waves. These portions of the trend go against the direction of the trend. Individual waves can be subdivided using Fibonacci numbers. For instance, wave 1 can be divided into 2, 3, 5, 8, and 13 waves. Rising waves are usually subdivided into 5 sections, while corrective waves can be subdivided into 3 sections. The use of Fibonacci numbers in the Elliott Wave Theory allows the user to form a prediction of the price action based on math. I'll be talking about the significance of the Fibonacci numbers in the Elliott Wave Theory more specifically in the next video, so stay tuned. But for now, this should be enough. Well, that was a lot of information that I just went through, so let's try to visualize this. Here we have a portion of our uptrend. In this image we see a wave 1 and wave 2. The endpoints are also labeled in purple so we can know exactly what we're looking at. When we start subdividing these 2 waves, we get this image. Looks pretty complicated, but most of it is just repetition, so once we get the general idea of it, it should look much simpler. Here we have our 2 labels for clarity. Our first subdivision is dividing wave 1 into 5. Why do we divide it into 5? We divide it into 5 because it is a rising wave in that it follows the direction of the trend, which is the uptrend. Wave 2 can also be divided very similarly, but since it's a correction wave, as it is going downward in an uptrend, we subdivide it into 3, which is labeled as A, B, and C. You may have noticed, but we basically subdivided wave 1 and 2 into something that resembles more like what we saw earlier. Like the previous image, wave 1's uptrend is made out of 5 waves, while the correction phase of wave 2 is made out of 3 waves. Let's subdivide wave 1 again, and we get this. Once again, we subdivide this wave into 5 because it is following the trend. This wave can also be subdivided again, and we get only 3 waves since a correction wave. This can be repeated for the rest of wave 1. As for subdividing wave 2, we can start by subdividing wave A. We can see that it subdivides into 5 portions. Why does it subdivide into 5 portions? It subdivides into 5 portions since wave 2 is a downtrend and wave A is following the direction of the trend as it is pointing downwards. Here we see wave B and it's only divided into 3. This is because the current trend is a downtrend but it's going upwards. This once again can be repeated for the remainder portion of wave 2. To clear things all up, this half is wave 1 while this half is wave 2. In total, if we only count the purple numbers, we have 2 waves. But if we count the blue numbers, we have 8 waves. If we count the pink numbers, we have 34 waves. As you can see, we can go on and on. The main reason for doing this is to help the trader predict price action. Now let's talk about how to use the Elliott Wave Theory. After the fifth wave, we should see the first decline, which is represented by wave A. However, there is a short bounce back up, so don't be fooled. Wave C shows the further correction. Let's now analyze corrective waves, as they're the ones that tell you when the cycle starts over. First, corrective waves can never take place in the first 5 waves. Second, they usually happen in 3 waves as mentioned before. However, an exception can be made if a triangle forms after the first 5 waves. Finally, corrective waves can take the shape of zigzags, flats, or triangles. Here we have our first pattern. Zigzags have 3 waves that go against the major trend. The 3 waves can also be further divided into 5, 3, and 5 waves respectively. Here we have our first zigzag. The first portion of the zigzag in blue is following the downtrend as it is pointing in the same direction of the trend. Therefore, we can divide it into 5 sections. This can also be applied to the orange portion of the wave. The green portion, however, needs to be divided into 3 as it is rising in the downtrend. This is called a bull market zigzag. The opposite is called a bear market zigzag, and it looks like this. It's the same thing but reversed, and all we need to do is subdivide the waves into 5 if it's following the trend and into 3 if it's going against the trend. Flats are very similar to zigzags, but it follows a 3-3-5 pattern. Here we see that the blue portion is only divided into 3 even though it's following the downtrend. Why is this? This is because there's less selling than what is required to form 5 waves downwards. Therefore, only 3 waves are formed, and it represents that the uptrend is still strong. Many traders consider flats to be more of a period of consolidation rather than a full-on correction. This formation is called a bull market flat. Once again, the opposite is called a bear market flat. It looks like this, and we use the same idea that even though the blue section is rising in a downtrend, there are only 3 subdivisions, but the buying pressure is pretty weak. This means that the bearish sentiment is still strong. There are also irregular flats, and there are slight variations of the original flats. For instance, we see that we made a higher high in the middle. This is called bull market flat irregular correction. It once again represents that the uptrend is still strong as we made a higher high. The opposite will just be this but flipped. The other irregular flat looks like this. We see that we didn't make a lower low as the orange line ended above the previous low. This is called a bull market flat inverted irregular correction. This also represents the trend is still strong as a higher low was made. Once again, the opposite will just be this but flipped. Finally, correction waves can look like triangles. Let's remind ourselves what triangles are, as this is more complex than the previous 2 patterns. Remember that a minimum of 4 points is needed to form a triangle, as you need 2 upper and 2 lower points. Also, the height of the triangle can be used to calculate how big the correction will be. Furthermore, since it's a triangle, we should be able to predict when it breaks out of the triangle, as it usually breaks out 3/4 of the triangle. So far, this is just a brief reminder, so if you want to know more about this, or don't really understand what I just said, watch my videos on triangles. I'll link that in the comment section below and up in the top right corner of your screen. Triangles can be classified into 4. The first triangle is called a symmetrical triangle, where both trend lines are sloped. The second triangle is called the ascending triangle. We see that only the bottom trend line is sloped. The third triangle is called a descending triangle, and this time we see that only the top trend line is sloped. The last triangle is an expanding triangle, and we see that it's a flipped symmetrical triangle. Well, that's it for this video. I hope everyone learned as much as I did reading a book, as that's the whole point of this channel. In this video, I introduced the Elliott Wave Theory. The next video will go over the Elliott Wave Theory in more detail. Therefore, if you don't want to miss out on future content, subscribe to the video. If you enjoyed this video and felt like you learned something new, like this video as it really supports the channel. If you have any questions, leave a comment below and I'll try my best to answer all the questions. Well, this is Books of the Stock Market, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central Time. Thanks.